Hello, YouTube. How's it going? If you get a chance, I'm gonna ask you to hit like on this video, hit subscribe. It's free, and share the video. Today, I want to talk about me growing up and the hairstyles that I was exposed to in my day. When I grew up, my dad was a barber, and he was a very good barber. He had customers coming in from everywhere. Living in Ecorse, Michigan, he had customers coming in every 2 weeks from Toledo, Ohio. He even had customers coming in from the coast of Detroit. He even had customers coming in from Toronto, Canada, once a month. So my dad was very good at what he did, and every time he went to work, there was always cars lined up in front of his barbershop of customers waiting for him to open. And they respected each other to the point where the first car that arrived, that was a customer that my dad cut first, all the way to until he finished all of the customers who were there. My dad was pretty busy all day long. A lot of times he never took a break. Like I said, he was very good at what he did. But some of the hairstyles that I wanted to wear, my dad didn't approve of. He felt like it was a little too wild, a little too crazy. And by him being the barber, he had to say so. So a lot of time I'll go in there and sit in his chair and, we had the afro style going on. So I said, Dad, I want you to cut into an afro. He said, okay. And so he get to cutting, and I'm not paying attention. I'm not looking at no mirrors or anything. And so when he get done, I look in the mirror and I don't have an afro. He done cut all the hair off. I'm like, Dad, what's going on? I asked for an afro. He said, well, I'm the barber, you my son. He says, I cut your hair the way I want to cut it. He said, now if you want to cut your hair the way you want to cut it, he said, you go out there and get a job and make your own money and then pay for your own haircut. I went, okay. So that was a story of that. But anyway, back in the day, I was exposed to all of these hairstyles. And I got some of the names of it. And each hairstyle had a name. And I'm sure at barber school, they probably got a name. But I was familiar with like the buzz cut. You cut it real close on the side, but you leave a lot on the top. The high top fade, where you cut it all off on the side. And the top, you really leave it up kind of long. So that and the afro, now that's what I wanted. I wanted to wear the afro. I thought the afro was so cool. But my dad, he felt like that's a little wild. He says, I want you to look a little neat, a little, so I'm thinking, oh man, Dad, I'm trying to, fit in, with the school, the guys at the school and everybody. I'm trying to fit in, everybody else got afros and I had the short. At that time, the haircut was called Covadas. Now I went to look up online Covadas and I couldn't even find it, so they don't even use that name anymore. But anyway, back in the day, they had what is called a fade. And back then, the fade was close on the sides, a little on the top, but it kind of flared out in the back kind of flared out as a nice little neat hairstyle, which eventually I end up wearing that too. Then they had flat tops, where you cut it a little on the sides, on top, and then you kind of just flatten it off on the top. A lot of guys had the flat top going on. Then curly, high fade. A lot of guys' hair was naturally curly, so they got a high fade, but their hair was already curly. So that's how their style was. Afro fade. It was those people who had coarse hair or had a lot of hair, who had a pick, and you can pick it out. And then you can grow it kind of tall on the top, or you can cut it full in the back. That was the Afro fade. A lot of guys come in, their hair didn't grow that fast, so they just came and got a line. So they would get it cut real nice and neat, line around the sides, line across the back. So that gave them a nice, cool look. And a lot of guys had waves. My hair was a little curly, slightly wavy, but it was natural that way. You know, if I was to put water in my hair, it would be real wavy, kind of a curly look. So a lot of guys got their hair cut with the waves, and then there were some barbers out there. I don't think my dad did it, but they would put, you know, different chemicals in the hair to kind of create a wave look, so they can, you know, wear that type of style. So buzz cut fade was popular. Curly taper fade was popular. All these fades was popular. But, you know, getting back to me, you know, I wanted the afro. I wanted to be cool. You know, I wanted to fit in. I wanted to blend in with the fellas. But my dad wasn't. So I eventually got a paper route. I was delivering the Detroit Free Press early in the morning. I think I had to get up and get out there, you know, meet the manager at 5 o'clock to get my papers. And I would deliver my papers, you know, 5 o'clock in the morning to all of my customers. Well, I built that paper route up. So I made some good money. Then later on, another guy quit his Detroit News paper route, and I took his Detroit News. So I had a Free Press route in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, and then I had the Detroit News that I did in the evening after I got out of school. I usually did it at 5, 6 o'clock-ish, because I would get out of school and do my homework, and then when I finished my homework, then I get out there and deliver my papers. So that's what I did. So I made my money, and I made some good money for that time, that time of, you know, of history. You know, I was making real good money. So I started going to my own barbershop. I found barbers who were, you know, I liked their cut. I liked the way they did hair. So I finally got my afro. I got to wear my afro, and I felt real good about that. I was able to, what I consider, fit in. And so that was good. I appreciate that. These barbers, you know, taking care of me and everything, put the tonic on, it's smelling good and everything. And so every now and then when I go out, you know, the church that I went to, we had this youth banquet. And, you know, you ask the girl, you know, if you take her to the banquet, and she agreed. So you got your stuff you bought your suits, and you bought your ties and your pairs of shoes, and you got your hair done. And I had the afro going on at the time, but then we had what is called a blowout, where you can go to the barbershop and they put a heated comb through your hair to kind of stretch it out. And then they'll trim it off so it's nice and round. And so I had that going on, which I really appreciated. And I did that for a long time, not necessarily a blowout, but at least I had the afro for a long time, and it got pretty big. So years later, when the afro wasn't so much as a style, I trained my hair to I combed it backward. I trained. It took a while for me to do that because, you know, my hair is already kind of soft. It wasn't coarse. It was already soft. But I trained it to go back. And then by my hair already being slightly wavy and curly, it had this nice, cool look. You know, and at one point I would pull my hair back and put it in a ponytail. You know, and I wore it like that for, you know, every now and then. Then I take the rubber band off and then just comb it back. And back in those days with my hair back and my hair kind of slightly wavy and everything, people used to say I look like Billy D. Williams. Now, those of you who are my age or older, or those of you who are movie buff or history buff, and movie history buff, you familiar with Billy D. Williams, and he was a cool guy. You know, he was a ladies' man. You know, he had everything going for him, and so people told me I look like Billy D. Williams, and not a lot of people told me that. Everywhere I go, they said, "Anybody ever said you look like Billy D. Williams?" I says, "Yeah, a few people told me that." You know, so it was good. You know, I worked with it, I played with it. You know, and so. I pulled it back, and then I started trimming my own. You know, at that age, I never really could have grown those sideburns. I couldn't. I had a little mustache, but I never did grow a beard at that time. But anyway, barbers began to change the way they do business back in those days. So they started taking appointments, and so I make my appointment, and I go and I get my hair cut. Make an appointment, go get a haircut. But there were some barbers that I tried to go. I'll make an appointment, and I go there, and I went, wait, hey, dude, what's going on? You said I could be at 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock, and this guy sitting in a chair at the 1 o'clock hour looked like he was just getting started. He said, well, he was already here. I'm like, yeah, but we had an agreement, man. We had an agreement. We supposed to be at 1 o'clock. Well, one barber did that. Another barber did the same thing. I mean, we had an agreement at a particular time, and then somebody else stepped in the chair. And I'm like, oh, man, come on. I said, so how long is it going to be? He said, it's going to be about another 20 minutes. And I'm thinking, like, I'm on a time schedule. So it got so frustrating until I decided I'm going to cut my own hair. I can depend on me. So I think I was in my, I don't know, maybe late 30s, maybe mid to late 30s, going on 40s. I started cutting my own hair. And then back in those days, I kind of admired the Telesavalas look. He was an actor on TV that had all his hair all shaved off, and he just had a cool look about him. And then too, I admired Isaac Hayes, because he was always bald, and I kind of liked that look. You could get a bald head, and you wearing some nice, glasses. It just had a cool look, and so my taste of how I look was beginning to change. So I started shaving my hair off, and I kind of like that look. Summertime it was really appropriate because it was hot, 90 degrees, and I'm a sweater. I sweat a lot, so the bald look was good. But then I began to really fall in love with that bald look. It became somewhat of my trademark, and so I really appreciate the bald look. And so I've been cutting my hair bald ever since 1995. I was working in a Ford Motor Company auto plant at the time, and it was always hot. It always seemed like it was 20 degrees hotter in there than it was outside. So it was appropriate for me, I thought, to have my hair all shaved off and bald. But I really like the look, so I sported that for a long time. And then too, I felt like I had the right shape of head for it. Everybody can't do the bald look because their head don't have the right shape. Now, I couldn't do the bald look in my 20s or 30s, because back in them days, I kind of had an egg-shaped head, But as I grew older and began to put on some weight, you begin to put on some weight around your neck. And then I worked out a little bit. So, I put on a little muscle in my neck. So it kind of changed the shape of the back of my head. So it didn't have an egg shape anymore. But anyway, I was able to, sport the bald look. And that worked out pretty good. But then later on in life, then I started growing a little hair on my face. And I kept it trimmed at a certain length for a while. But then I decided I'm just gonna let it go all out, and so I've been letting it grow, which is pretty cool. And so by letting it grow like that at that time, and this was before I started to gray, start the gray thing happening. People would tell me, hey, anybody tell you look like Terry Crews? Or a lot of people told me that. Anybody tell you look like Terry Crews? And then they told me I look like a guy who played on Shawshank Redemption. I forgot his name. I think it was Alfonso or something. They told me you look like him, Then there are people who showed me pictures of people, and I looked at the people and went, oh my God, that guy could look like my brother. So anyway, that's my thing about hair. Hair is a great identifier for a man, particularly a black man. We identify ourselves by our hair, our hairstyle, our groom, the way we groom, the way we look, particularly if that man is, into the girls, into the women, trying to style, keep his style going, keep everything flowing, and so the hairstyles of the day was pretty good back then. And so I just decided at one point I'm just going to shave, and I've done that ever since. And since I've done that, I've become bald on the top, and I have a little hair on the side. So now when I shave, I just shave the hair off the sides and the back, But anyway, I felt like the bald makes the face look younger, as opposed to at my age particularly. When you start growing hair and you got graying going on, and if you have gray going around your ears, it kind of make you look a lot older. But I've been fortunate enough to look a lot younger than I really am. People don't know that in a few years I'm gonna be 70. A lot of people got me for late 50s, which is excellent. I appreciate that. But anyway, that's my story about hairstyles, growing up in the 70s and in the 80s. Those were the hairstyles. Hairstyles even changed now. There now time I'll look at a hairstyle of a young guy and I'm like, man, he look a little crazy. But then I remember what my dad used to say about me when I wanted to do the afro. He says, man, that look a little crazy. That look a little wild. But anyway, me, I let the men be themselves. As long as men, they stay out of trouble. I don't care what kind of hairstyle they're in. Let them wear their hairstyle. Let them be who they are. I got nephews who got the craziness going on, but I let him be who he is. Let us keep his self-esteem. Let him feel good about how he is, who he is, how he look, all of that. Because if in time his taste gonna change and he's gonna end up, doing something different. But that's what I had to say about the hair. I appreciate y'all checking me out. I appreciate y'all commenting on my channel. Those of you, some of y'all still welcome me as a new content creator. I appreciate that. Man, I really appreciate the likes, people who watch the channel. So I'm going to ask you again if you would kindly share the video and hit like and hit subscribe. And then it'll allow the YouTube algorithm to place me in an area where I can be seen more often. So I appreciate that. So, hey, y'all take care. You have a great day. And, hey, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.